Good morning. My name is Colonel Isla Ferrier. I command the Royal Marines barracks here in Deal, which of course contains the Royal Marines School of Music. I am delighted to be able to give you the short introduction to this video to mark the 50th anniversary of the award of the Freedom of Deal by the town to the Corps of Royal Marines in 1945. In those days, you will remember, it was just before the end of the Second World War, and there were, of course, many thousands of Marines who had been and were still based here at Deal. 50 years on, of course, the picture has changed dramatically, and we are a much reduced force, but still very much part of the organisation and the town itself. And we remember over 130 years of history of when the first really formed part of the Marine Corps came to the barracks here in Deal. The first Marines came here back in 1665. There was an organisation called the Yellow Company which arrived in that year, who were the first of the Duke of York and Albany's Maritime Regiment of Foot, which were our ancestors in that time. But it was not until 1861 that a formed body of Marines arrived in Deal, and that's when our real history started in association with the town. At this time, 50 years ago, many Marines marched through the town, and there were many admirals and Marine generals who, with the mayor of the time, gratefully accepted the freedom on behalf of the Corps. On the 9th of February 1995, we reenacted that in a much reduced form, remembering the 14th of February 1945.
There have been Royal Marines in the barracks at Walmer since 1861. During that time, a close affinity between them and the townsfolk of Deal has grown into maturity. Many Royals have married and settled in the area on retirement, and some families go back several generations in their kinship with the Corps. Over the years, many clubs and associations have benefited from instruction and facilities they've used in the barracks, and have joined in leisure activities galore, some as the audience and some participating. There have been church parades, tattoos, open days, displays, plays, operettas, winter and summer concerts, and not least of all, the Sergeant's Mess pantomimes to enrich the local scene. Most of these activities have raised and donated large sums of money to local and national charities. During the First World War, the Royal Naval Division was reformed in Walmer and several operations were mounted from Deal. Certainly the most important of these was the raid on Zeebrugge in April 1918. The famous 4th Battalion formed and trained here, and the remnants returned after the battle, 2 Victoria Crosses being awarded by ballot. A few of the veterans of that gallant action still live and continue to gather at Deal on St George's Day to remember fallen comrades. King George V visited Deal in March 1918 to inspect the 4th Battalion and all aspects of training at the depot. During this visit he instituted the title King's Squad for the senior squad passing out, and the King's Badge, awarded ever since to the best all-round recruit in each squad. What is now East Barracks was originally the site of a naval hospital, which was destroyed by lightning in the Great Storm of 1809. The present buildings, built largely by French prisoners of war, were commenced in 1812 and continued in use as a hospital. There were separate barracks on the site to accommodate troops. In fact, the first detachments of the Depot Royal Marines were accommodated here in 1861, although there had been smaller groups at this spot since the Crimean War. During the reign of George III, many casualties were treated here during several abortive campaigns on land and sea. Indeed, on occasions, the wounded were brought ashore in boatloads. There is a graveyard behind the main buildings, but most of the headstones have been removed to North Barracks, where they're situated in a garden of remembrance, the site of another graveyard, where at one stage the dead were buried in pits. A total of 2,425 burials are recorded, but this is probably far short of actual numbers. The last recorded interment is for 1882. Built by Henry VIII in 1540 as part of an integrated defence of our southern coast, Deal Castle remains very much in original condition. The first recorded occupation of Deal Castle by Marines was in 1665, when a company of Yellowcoats, that's members of the Duke and Albany's Maritime Regiment of Foot, commanded by Captain Silas Titus, moved in. He remained the captain of Deal Castle until 1671. The 2 latest captains of the castle have been Royal Marines. The son of General Sir Ian Taylor, captain from 1972 to 1979, is taking the salute at today's parade. The present incumbent is Major General Sir Ian Stuart Harrison, CB Royal Marines. After passing the castle, the parade is marching through what was the site of the old naval dockyard. Proceeding along the Prince of Wales Terrace, they march its full extent, out through what was the gate, and past the Time Ball Tower. The Time Ball, operated by electric signal from Greenwich, fell at 1 o'clock each day, enabling ships in the Downs to set their chronometers before commencing long voyages. The last keeper of the tower, when it officially closed in 1927, was a Royal Marine, Lieutenant Temporary Captain George Cutcher. On Peace Day in July 1919, units of Royal Marines lined the promenade from the castle to the pier. On a signal from the end of the pier, they fired a feu de joie to celebrate the armistice. the time of Trafalgar, Nelson certainly made some of his plans whilst ashore at what is now the Royal Hotel, returning on board to sleep each night. He's also reputed to have spent time locally doing a bit of courting. These events are commemorated by a special suite of rooms in the hotel. There were at least 2,600 Royal Marines present at the battle. Nelson, fatally wounded by a sniper's bullet, was carried below by Sergeant Secker, and on return from the battle, Victory, with Nelson's body still aboard, lay off Deal for 3 days on account of the foul weather. During World War II, the Royal Naval School of Music was evacuated, but the non-commissioned officers' training wing, communications school and PT school remained. Recruit training continued, and one of the first Royal Marine Commando units formed here. Another of the main Royal Marine tasks was to man the big railway guns, Winnie and Pooh, and other artillery in this corner of Kent. At its highest level, the Deal garrison area accommodated over 2,500 Royal Marines in the 4 barracks in Walmer. Since 1945, when the Freedom Charter was granted, recruit training has continued, junior marine training commenced, and the Royal Naval School of Music, returned from exile, was renamed the Royal Marine School of Music. The old barrack blocks in North Barracks have been replaced by modern accommodation and facilities, opened by Her Majesty the Queen Mother in May 1956. No trace remains of the infirmary barracks in Gladstone Road. They've been demolished for housing. Gradually, the military training traditionally carried out at Deal has been relocated in the West Country at the Commando Training Centre in Limpstone, Devon. All that remains in the 3 surviving barracks, North, East and South, is the Royal Marine School of Music, and at present there are plans in hand by the Ministry of Defence to relocate the school in Portsmouth.
up at open order in 3 ranks, awaiting your inspection.
Distinguished guests, Royal Marines, ladies and gentlemen, children. 50 years ago, the honorary freedom of the Borough of Deal was conferred upon Her Majesty's Royal Marines. That freedom was granted by the Mayor, Aldermen and Councillors on behalf of the people of Deal. It was awarded in recognition of the debt owed to the men of their corps who fought so bravely on oceans and battlefields throughout the world, fighting against the evils of fascism, racism and injustice. For that reason, it is important that the children representing the local schools are present here today, that they too will remember the reason for this very special occasion. Remember and question why that freedom was granted at the end of World War II. Granted at a time of renewed hope and optimism in the future. A future that was won at such a great sacrifice and loss of life by a whole generation. These 50 years on, it is important that we recognise and mark an event which acknowledge the courage and bravery of those times. The courage and bravery that is so especially epitomised by the Royal Marines, whose imagination could not have been stirred on hearing that the Corps would exercise their right to march through the town of Deal with 6 bayonets, flags flying and drums beating. What a fine spectacle, and we have not been disappointed. We will certainly remember today for many years to come. The last time the Royal Marines marched through Deal was shortly after the tragic and terrible bombing of 1989, and Deal will never forget that dreadful day 5 years ago. In memory of those young men who died in that bombing, we have a memorial bandstand, a sad and most fitting and poignant tribute to the loss of those young lives. Today, however, we must also remember all that is good and all that is positive in the long association between the Royal Marines and the community of Deal. We now have a shared history, a common identity, and a bond of friendship that will always remain. No matter what the future holds for us both, no matter what the outcome of government defence cuts, we in Deal are proud of our longest historical association with you. And be assured, Her Majesty's Royal Marines will always have a very special place in the hearts and minds of the people of Deal. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I will start by saying how pleased I am to be here today at Deal to represent the Commandant General, who sends his greetings to you all. He's in Norway at the moment, visiting 3 Command Brigade that's on exercise over there. Looking back, it's a very great honour your predecessor bestowed on the Royal Marines, and I thank you for all that you have said today. I much appreciate that. Now, nearly 50 years ago, on Wednesday the 14th of February 1945, the freedom of the Borough of Deal was conferred upon the Royal Marines as a tribute to the centuries-old friendship that had existed between the civil authorities and the members of our corps. And I'm pleased to say that that close friendship still continues today. Now, there is one major difference today, that there are 10 girls on parade in Royal Marines uniform. I'll not repeat all that was said on that day 50 years ago by Lieutenant General Sir Thomas Hunton, although he did remind all those who gathered of the naval and Royal Marine connections which Deal had developed over many years. The English fleet gathered off this coast in 1588 to do battle with the Armada. Naval engagements were fought in these waters with the Dutch. Lord Nelson made his headquarters here in 1801, whilst attempting the destruction of Napoleon's invasion barges. And he even found the time to entertain Lady Hamilton and her husband at the Three Kings Inn, or so I'm told. Now, I understand that the earliest marine connection with Deal is in 1660, when there was in the High Street an inn called the Three Marines. And that was 4 years before we were even officially formed. Then in 1665, Deal met its first Marines in the form of a company of foot soldiers, which was described as the Yellow Company from the colour of its coats. These were men of the Duke of York and Albany's Maritime Regiment of Foot. Its captain was one Silas Titus, who became the captain of Deal Castle. An honour bestowed on several Royal Marines since then, including my uncle General Taylor in the 1970s, and a post now held by General Ian Harrison, Royal Marines, who's here with us today. It's interesting to note that Silas Titus was made responsible for the defence of this part of the coast against invasion by the Dutch. And here we are today in a close partnership with the Royal Netherland Marine Corps as the UK Netherland Landing Force assigned to NATO. And of course Deal is twinned with Vlissingen in Holland on the island of Walcheren, a name which is very important in Royal Marine history as a result of the amphibious operation which took place there on the 1st of November 1944. Now, remaining with the history of the Corps, I need not remind many of you here today that it was back in 1914 that the Royal Marines Brigade went to Antwerp to discover the horrors of trench warfare. And the 4th Battalion formed here for that part and trained for that part in the Zeebrugge raid. The Royal Naval School of Music, which became the Royal Marine School of Music, was also established at Deal during the early part of the century. In the last war, the 1st Royal Marines Commando was formed here and went into action soon afterwards in the Dieppe raid. Closer to today, 4-1 Commando was stationed here and deployed to Northern Ireland on operations. And of course, I must not forget the many thousands of recruits and bandsmen who have lived and been trained here and still have very happy memories of the days spent in the barracks and enjoying the hospitality of Deal and its people. Now, I've mentioned your hospitality and the friendship shown by Deal since the 1660s. And before finishing, I must recall that terrible time when the barracks was bombed. There are many here who have vivid memories of that horrific event, and I will not dwell on it, other than to say that we, the Corps, owe you an enormous debt for the way you rallied round and did all you could to help the survivors and their families. And I understand that's still going on today, and I'm most grateful. Thank you. Now, your acts personify the close ties which had developed over the years and were then made even stronger. So I thank you, Madam Mayor, and everybody from Deal present here today, for all that you've done for the members of the Corps, for our Corps, and our families over the years. And for me personally, it's a singular honour to be with you to share this anniversary. Thank you, Deal.
turning around and then...
Ladies and gentlemen, the worship town mayor's bill comes from Mr. Darling Rambotham, Piccadilly Taylor. Mr. Chairman, Right Worshipful Mayors from Sandwich and Dover, distinguished guests, the Royal Marines, ladies and gentlemen, pray silence for the worshipful town mayor of Deal.
Ladies and gentlemen, children. Once again, good morning and welcome to you all. Regrettably, it's very limited space, so I'm afraid only a small representation of the town and the Corps of Marines are able to be with us this morning. I believe that is reception. So dear, on behalf of the Charter Trustee and the Townspeople of Deal, I would like you to accept the ceremonial seal and certificate which has been commissioned to celebrate the 50th anniversary conferring of the honorary freedom of the town of Deal upon Her Majesty's Royal Marines. In the past, the seal of a monarchy, or town, or city was of great symbolic importance. Often it fastened important documents and various messages and commands. It was used often to ratify, validate or stamp with authority the wishes of that said authority. And since 1945, which is the old coat of arms that you'll see on the original Freedom Scroll, we've got a new coat of arms, and that now, which I think you'll see, does incorporate the Royal Marines. So now, actually on our town crest. Accompanying the seal is a certificate which incorporates the old and the new, the old copy of the old crest with the new coat of arms. In presenting this particular gift, we wish to reaffirm the freedom which our predecessors bestowed 50 years ago. Deal's motto, which you can read on this new coat of arms, translated from the Latin means befriend a stranger. We hope today that you have felt and witnessed that special friendship that is unique for the Royal Marines. Thank you. Raise your glasses and toast Her Majesty's Royal Marines.
Madam Mayor, Mr. Chairman, Right Worshipful Mayors of Dover and Sandwich, distinguished guests, the Royal Marines, ladies and gentlemen, pray silence for Brigadier Kelly.
I'm not going to repeat what I said outside, but I did mean it. It is a tremendous friendship that has developed between the Royal Marines and the town of Deal, and it's a friendship which will last forever. And I'm particularly grateful on behalf of the board to receive the token that you've just given me.
And I will take that back and show the Commandant and explain it to him how important it is to you all here. And I'd like to mark this 50th anniversary by presenting you, Madam Mayor, and I have to say I've got to be politically correct. I think you should be Mr. Mayor, shouldn't you? But there we are. Madam Mayor, I have to say that, Madam Mayor, I must present you now, and the people of Deal, who are represented here today, with a drum, and this, of course, is an important symbol of all that goes on within the Royal Marine Barracks that we're so close to, the Royal Marine School of Music. And past Royal Marines, or former Royal Marines, and once a Royal Marine, always a Royal Marine, lift your glasses and to toast Deal. Deal. Deal.
Today we have witnessed what is probably an historic event. Savour it. Might well have been the last chance to hear the heels tap, the drums beat, and the bayonets flash through the streets of Deal.